Hey, everybody.
Hey.
We're back in the studio.
We're
Here
here.
we are.
It does feel good to be
We're
here.
at our home base. Yeah.
For a
It
brief-
does. We
for a
haven't
brief
done
moment.
a studio podcast in a while, right?
No, because
Long
last
time.
week
Feels
was
like a long time.
our library, and then we were at your mother's.
Oh, geez.
And then, yeah.
And then we were at Kripalu.
Since the Dude Fest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude Fest.
The Dude Fest. I love it's a fest now.
I never said that before. I don't know. I like it though. It's just Dude Fest.
It's popular. It's a popular episode.
I love it. I have a question
Dudecast.
for all of you, since we are all trained in TM.
Yeah.
I've noticed something. Since doing TM regularly, I have noticed that whenever I undergo any sort of like ailment or malady, whether it be like a cold or something,
Ooh, great word. Malady.
I recover twice as fast.
Agreed.
Ooh.
Seriously. Like
Yeah.
Agreed.
Friday night, I thought we were sitting on the couch watching TV, and I
Yep.
could feel like a head cold coming on, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is like 10
Worst
days
timing.
of my life right now, where it's
Yeah.
like starts in your head, and then it goes down to my nose, and then into my lungs, and then that is a 10-day process."
Mm-hmm.
This was Friday night. I slept wonderful last night and the night before. Like Monday, I feel like, oh, I'm better.
Man.
Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was shocked. So I'm curious if any of you have experienced something similar.
That's it. Remember when I tested positive for COVID on Friday? And then
Yeah.
on Monday, I was like, I'm going to test again. I think I'm clear.
I think I'm good. Yeah.
I'm good. Well, that weekend, I had the Reiki share. I had some other, all the things going on, TMing and taking care of myself, self-care. And I was like, I'm gonna clear this. It was almost like a test.
Yeah.
You did it.
I was like, the universe is gonna help me clear this, and I'm acknowledging that. And so, yeah, I agree with you.
Awesome.
Nice. I think maybe it's also the amount of echinacea that you've been taking.
I took 2 pills twice a day. I
Yeah.
wasn't
There you go.
overloading. That wasn't a whole lot. I've done it, but I've taken that much before,
And it
and
still
it
takes a
still
long
has
time.
taken at least a week to start feeling normal again.
All right. Well,
I think the good
TM.
sleep is key. So the
Yeah.
TM helps you get good sleep,
Yeah.
and then the good sleep keeps you being healthy more.
Right.
yeah.
You know,
Well,
like
Along those lines, I think Carol said this, where like once you get into the brain waves of TM, like you're
Mhm.
really under it, like mimics sleep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So you're getting like 2 extra little sleeps a day,
Yeah.
so your body can like
Rejuvenate.
recover.
Yeah.
There you go.
I thought you were going to tell everybody about the new kind of TM that I invented.
Oh, tell us. Tell us
can't.
more.
We can't. It's not
Why do they do
G-rated.
that? Why do they do that to
That's
us?
just secret.
I
Just
didn't
like
bring this
inside
up.
jokes.
I was like, wow. I was like, oh, we're going to go.
Oh no!
And then,
Thought you were
and
gonna
then,
go
no,
there.
you went
Now
in a
we're
different
there 'cause she
direction with the
brought
TM.
yeah,
Mhm.
we could have. I avoided that, and you're like, actually, let's circle back.
Well, just keeping
I
people
think
on
we
their
could
toes.
all fill in the blanks here.
That's right.
I think
People
you're
can
right.
guess.
I think you can fill in the blanks.
Sabrina's
Cosmic love. It is cosmic love.
Christ.
Cosmic
Wow.
love.
Cosmic
Love it.
love.
Cosmic love.
Any other
Okay.
front desks before we dive in?
I thought that I had a front desk, but no, I think that it has run away from me.
Oh, that's a good story. Thank you.
I did want to say that tomorrow's Valentine's Day.
Heyo.
Tomorrow's Valentine's Day. So it's our annual reminder to dip a piece of leather in goat's blood and slap people with it.
Oh wow.
Just a friendly reminder, everyone.
I was expecting something super practical.
If you're listening to this after the fact, it's not too late.
I was gonna say.
Or
I better
it's
go
too
get
late.
some.
Yeah, I mean, and if you get drops of
Well, this
goat's
is
blood on
coming
you,
out-
it's fertility.
This
It's
is-
a sign of fertility.
This
Keep
will
it
be
away.
released on Valentine's Day,
Nice.
so it drops at 6 a.m.
So Lupercalia blessings to everyone.
Lupercalia.
We'll call it a goat slap.
Goat blood slap.
Go ahead and get your goat slap.
That could have a euphemism. Okay,
Yeah,
moving
that's
on.
like slang for something.
Moving on.
Valentine's Day.
What are we here to talk about today?
Oh, if we're there already, we are talking about something nice and light.
Yes.
Light conversation. The religion versus spirituality talk.
I mean, versus is a tricky phrase. I think it's like comparison.
I'm like, whose heart rate just went up? Someone out there. And that's okay.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah,
There was
I mean,
Versus.
a little bit.
This isn't like
I
a
feel
court
it.
case. I wasn't trying to religion v spirituality.
I
right,
think
right.
they're not at odds. They're part of each other.
Right.
Yeah.
That's,
like-
yeah.
yeah.
It
So
was
that
That's the verse. That's why versus is tough.
okay.
It's
Versus
like-
implies one against the other.
correct. Correct.
Okay.
So
We could stick it to an and.
And.
Religion and
That's a
spirituality.
much
religion
better way.
and
There we go.
religion
Right.
and or
And that.
How do we want to
And-
structure this? Where do we start?
Well, I think it's just about like this comes, I think, from a lot of our students arriving in our spaces with some pretty significant religious trauma and spiritual trauma.
Or just a religious background.
Practice. Yeah.
Practice?
Current
Yeah,
practice.
current
Right.
practice.
Right. And interestingly, when our students have like a really great relationship with a religious practice, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of like confusion. It's when students have a not great background in religious practice or a previously toxic relationship with spirituality and spiritual communities that they come in with a lot of like concern/question and like, where does one end and the other begin, if that is a thing that happens. And like there's just all those kind of conversations that happen in office hours and in classes when we're talking about being a trauma-informed yoga space in general, you know, like
For this and for our listeners, do we want to like establish where each of us land as far as both of the practices that we have had or have? You know what I mean? Like, I was raised Catholic, and went to church every week until once I went away to college. That fell off, but I would go home in the summertime and still kind of go, mainly out of like obligation.
Yeah,
not total choice. But it was more of like after college, I spent some time still living at home with my parents, going to grad school, and then I stopped practicing or going to church regularly. But I mean, it was a 18-year practice. It's very entrenched in a lot. So that's like my background as far as one or the other. Like that's how I.
Yeah. But then when did like? Well, maybe we'll circle back to that. But like, do you consider yourself religious now?
Probably not.
Do you consider yourself spiritual now?
Yes. Well, I guess we got to define our terms.
Ooh.
We got to get academic here.
Oh,
get
yeah.
All right, let's before that, but I would like to hear from you guys as far as past practices, like maybe upbringing.
Yeah. Let's
Josh,
go
you
with
said it
Josh.
sounded like you agreed or had
I
similar
also
experience.
similar experience. I was raised Catholic, went to Catholic school, and then for K through 8, and then but my parents we went every Sunday, every holiday, still do, as a family and stuff like that. But definitely when I went to college, for me, I kept going to Mass because it was like a connection to home. Like when I moved to Boston, it was like a completely whole new world for me. So I felt like going to Mass was something stable that made me feel like I could connect with people at home still in a certain way. And that's actually, that has been kind of my experience but also as I went to college, learned of other faiths and other people of other faiths. And I think Catholicism especially can tell you that, and does tell you that you are right and that is it. And just like all faiths, I think that there's a oneness to it that kind of divides and keeps you away from everyone else, and it makes everyone by default wrong.
Right.
So that's like I had to break down some barriers there and realize that that's like untrue. And that happened through high school too, as I went to public high school. But then spirituality has always been a part of a thread throughout it all, and more just opened my mind to that. I love the tradition of Christianity and Catholicism. Like, I think that there's something to be said for my father's 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 father, pretty much all practicing and worshiping God in the same way. That's a lot of hours spent in communion with God. And I think for a while I pushed it away. And then I actually have recently been since I had kids and over the last probably 10 years, been able to see the value in those traditions. And just like any tradition, I think that it makes me feel close again to my family and kind of almost give reverence to the relationship and the spiritual connection my lineage has had in a certain way, But yeah, it's definitely always ebbing and flowing the more that I invest into it. And spirituality is it's a lifesaver for me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So definitely.
Yeah, totally with the idea of, if you believe this, there is like no other ones really. And this is it. I mean, like the word Catholic, it means like universal or like one, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like implied in the name where it's like, this is the only one.
Right.
Which is like, that was for me growing up, I mean, mid to late teens, where I was like, this is this only thing? There's got to be others, right? And I didn't have the environment where I could like ask those questions and have an honest discussion,
real conversation,
a conversation of
Yeah.
debate, right? It was more of
Who told
like,
you about this?
I'd say like dogmatic.
Right.
And it's not fair to say because I didn't initiate the conversation. I was just afraid it might be that way. So I just didn't even have it, you know?
It's that Irish guilt there too.
It is.
Yeah.
Mm.
What about you? What about you, babe?
Yeah. Well, I grew up Roman Catholic, and my dad took us to.
Surrounded by papists.
That's
here.
right. That's right. All of us paying our dues.
Well, yeah. So to start off, my parents were not together. They were never married, so that was always like a thing.
Dun, dun,
my
dun.
my dad would still take us to church. We would go once a month to Harvey's Lake. We would go up to church there, and it was very much a family event. And to be honest, at the time, I loved it. And however, I reflect on it now, and I don't think that my relationship with universe creator has changed since I was a little girl and who I am now, in the sense that some of the things that you both expressed, like there is one, this is the, oh, I'm going to have to question this. I've gotten this experience now I'm questioning. I think for me, that was just always, it was never like, this is it. Because then we had my mom, who was very much spiritual. So then I would be with my mom, and she would talk about God as well, but in the realm of like, you don't have to go to church, and it's nice that your dad takes you. So I very much, I feel like, had this realm and this realm. And so I never saw it as, even growing up, I loved going to church, as I said. I never saw it as like, I guess I never realized how young I was that this is, some people are like, this is the way.
Yeah, right.
I just assumed that it was universal and like everyone can do what they believe until I got older and, perhaps less naive. And then I was like, okay, so I understand this now.
Well, Catholic
So, yeah.
school also is another reinforcer of like, my entire universe was Catholic. So like even mentioning other faiths, even Protestant, like it's like that old. Like,
Oh man, I didn't hear that.
It's like,
word
oh
in-
hell no.
I didn't hear
Did you
that.
go to Catholic school too?
I went K through 12.
Okay.
Different
Oh, wow.
schools. K through
Yeah.
8 was one school, and then I went to
And high
Notre
school.
Dame High School, which is so funny because I always reflect on when the children found that out,
Uh-huh.
and they were like, "Whoa, what was it like?" They
They're
all
like,
religious.
nuns
I'm
are
like,
beating you
"You-"
daily.
Well, no, they're all like had this impression of what the
You
students
prayed all day?
or what the
Yeah,
students were like.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I'm like, the goofballs you see every day, exactly the same.
Uh-huh.
Just in uniforms.
Right. Just
Yeah.
the dress code. But the K through 8 was a little bit more like we had religion classes.
Yep.
And in high school, the K through 8 was a little bit more dogmatic, where like they talked about the faith and the rules and stuff like that. Once you got to high school, there was a little bit of that, but it also was really good. I still reflect on one of my favorite years was the sacraments. And this is like junior year, so like 16, 17. And our teacher was like, okay, when we talk about marriage, it was not like talking about this is how marriage should be. It was more of like, how do you date? Like, what is relationship like? Like, how do you move in the world to be with someone? And like, what does that look like? And we watched a couple movies. One of them was Forget Paris with Billy
Okay.
Crystal. And it's like he meets a woman and then they work on the marriage throughout the movie. And it just brought up really good questions. And it was really good, like actual real world, like how do you move about in the world?
That's cool.
In this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not just like, well, this is the rules and there is nothing
You
else.
must get
know?
married.
And we don't talk
Right.
outside of it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so for clarity, I didn't go to
You didn't go to
Catholic
Catholic school.
Right. I went to regular public school.
Heathen public school.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just
Heathen
on
public school.
just on Sundays was the full day
Blasphemy.
Okay.
for catechism and things of that nature. So
Cool.
yeah.
Wow.
That's a good mix.
Technically, I suppose I was baptized Methodist.
I mean, were you?
Yeah.
Did I know that?
I don't know.
Wow. I just learned something new.
There we go.
Jeez
shoot.
Louise.
Happy Valentine's
My mother's mother, so my maternal grandmother and great grandmother were really like involved in the Methodist Church, to the point where like my great grandmother was a missionary and she would like
Oh, wow.
go to like the Dominican Republic
Cool.
and spend time on her, like she was a high school English teacher, and then in the summer times and breaks.
Wow.
And things. So yeah, like
That's a real
being
Catholic. Yes,
Methodist
Real
was
Christian.
a thing. I have 2 memories of church. One being that I stood up in the middle of a service. I might have been 3, like 3.5, Luna's age 4, and said, can somebody tell Jesus to hurry up because I'm really hot? And
I love
Oh my
that.
gosh, if I drop my Cheerios.
I thought you were gonna like you say you touched the host and it set on fire or something like that. No.
No. I just had opinions at church. And then I was in Sunday school one morning, I guess it was. And I kept asking my Sunday school teacher, like we had read the story of the Garden of Eden. Like and I remember there being like a puppet show kind of a thing that we were watching. And I was like, I have follow-up questions. How do we all have different last names then? And that stumped her.
That's a good question.
And she was like, well, over time people just need it. And I was like, wait, but then we're all related. And then I was like, but how do people have different skin colors? I just kept asking, and she was like, you know what? I'm bringing you back to your grandmother. So she brought me back upstairs, and I got to sit back in the pew with my grandmother. And that's my last memory of going to church.
Wait, didn't you go to church with my dad one time?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
As going to Methodist church as a child,
gotcha,
right?
yeah.
And Mom, like, once she came out, one of her very best friends was very into like earth-based spirituality and tarot and paganism and ritual and all of these. She was also Jewish, and she had this like witchy, like Jewish folk magic stuff about her. And we lived with her for a little bit, and she was one of my mom's best friends for a while. So like that infused a lot of things very young, around like 8, into my world. And then we found the Unitarian congregation. And so once you're in like the realm of Unitarian Universalism, it is it's the opposite of this is the way. It's like,
These are the ways.
it's all the way
Yeah,
that
right.
works for you. And, like there are,
I don't know why she did this. And then Josh's voice came in. I was like, whoa. Okay, continue on.
These are all the ways. And you could worship in any way and go to that congregation, and you could believe in any way. And they spoke like sermons, and any kind of speaking from the pulpit was always very much about mutuality and democracy and collectivism and coming together, and that it's actually in our differences that we are the strongest. And it's one of the things that would make our congregation so strong, because we have people having different beliefs and different perspectives, and that makes you stronger. So that was like ingrained in Unitarian congregation. And I stuck with that all the way, through high school. And I still go periodically to the Unitarian congregation here. And Madeline works there. So it always like met that belief that I had, that there's a thread of truth in every single religious path, and that usually that thread of truth has something to do with love and connection with one another, and that like if we can just find the commonality in that one thread, then the details of how we do the things are irrelevant, And I did go to church, but I went to mass with Dad.
Yeah. It was pretty early on. Like, were we married?
We were married.
Barely.
We were definitely
Like
married.
the summer after we got married. or
Yeah,
something,
because you said to me like, "We're married. You don't have to like,
You don't have to do this.
We're past that
you
point.
know, you are you trying to impress him? He's impressed. You're fine. Like, you don't need to." I just love church. I love ritual. I love ceremony. I can filter things out when they don't sound like they're in alignment for me. We went to a friend's wedding. Was that a little over a year ago now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a Catholic mass.
Catholic mass.
And it happened to be on a feast day,
Love that.
because there's always feast days.
Every day's
We-
a
I
feast
feel
day
like
if you
we've-
want it to be.
Well, I feel like this has come up because I've definitely
Yeah.
searched whatever
It
Patron
came up.
saints.
It
Yeah.
came up with with the saints before.
Yeah. So being in that wedding ceremony, like not in it, we weren't in it, but listening to it and being there and listening to the
readings and
the homily or whatever, I was like, this is a little heavy-handed
Well,
in the
I mean,
patriarchy for this wedding. And I'm like,
the problem.
problem.
I say problem. I hate to say disappointed, but the wedding was in December, so I was expecting the church. It was a beautiful church to
Yeah.
be decorated
Christmas
for Christmas.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was not at all.
Mm.
Not very minimal, which surprised
Strange.
Even my church.
Because there's
Go hard on
specific,
Christmas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Oh,
the
yeah.
trees,
Yeah.
evergreen, like it was all over.
there are specific Mary colors to things.
Mary colors.
Yeah, right.
There's a feast of
The Immaculate Conception.
Immaculate Conception.
Well,
yeah.
and that means that they could not pick the readings they wanted for the ceremony, since
Rats.
it was that such an
Yeah.
important feast
yeah,
day.
it's one of
Right.
the big
That
ones.
you had like
Oh my
every
god,
church.
it was so patriarchal. I was like,
Yeah.
yo.
Well, I mean, it was like from Genesis, where
yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah,
it's
those are the worst ones.
no,
Those
yeah,
are
it was
tough,
like
yeah.
like woman will cleave to her husband.
Oh my
Like, there
god,
something
it was
along-
so
Yeah.
nuts.
Yeah.
It was. I was just like, what am I listening to? But then the funniest part about it, right, is we're there with Matt's whole family. I am the heathen,
Non-practicing Christian.
non-Catholic,
Right.
What is it? What's it called when you get the thing so you can eat the Christ?
Eucharist.
Eucharist. I can't do that.
No.
That's right.
Right. And
And you were like, "I'm going to do it." I'm like, "You cannot do this.
so freaking silly to me. Like, I'm gonna buy a whole jar of those
That's
wafers.
it.
You can't."
I was like, that's
buy
one of
them on
my
Amazon.
traumas
You can.
because
Can.
my dad couldn't take communion
Oh,
because I believe
he never did the thing.
he had us out of wedlock.
Yeah, if you.
Oh.
That's another one. If you
So
get
like growing
divorced,
up, I
if you-
remember repeatedly asking my dad, I'm like, well, why do I go up and you don't go up? You know, as a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
confusing.
yeah.
everybody
That's
got in
crazy.
line, like, and the priest,
Yeah.
he's like, if you don't have the magic powers to come up and eat the body,
Don't say
Of
that.
course- what? If you don't have the
If
the
you have
thing,
not received your gone through the sacrament of First Communion,
Yeah.
that's a sacrament. You have
Okay.
to go through that.
then you
so
can't
it.
do the thing. But if you want to come up, you can just cross your arms in front of your chest and you can receive a blessing. And I was like, shit, yeah, I'm gonna get
yeah.
blessed. Because I'll get blessed wherever. Like, I'll
go.
bless myself. I'll bless you. You can bless me. We can get blessed by lots of people.
Let's all get blessed.
And
Let's
so
all
I,
get
I
blessed.
stood in line to get blessed. And these turkeys, you and your sister didn't even go up.
No.
Like, I was like, oh, everyone's getting in line. We're all getting
Did
in
you-
line. This is what
Did
we're
you
doing.
have your recent confession, et cetera, et cetera?
I'm like, are you not? I'm like,
those are
wait
the
a
rules, too.
second.
I
Like,
don't know if I go up.
I haven't
They're gonna
confessed.
know.
I'm like, we got married. Did we not get married the right way? Well, how come you're not taking? I don't know what's going on right now. Why is nobody? I really didn't know until I turned around to go sit back in the pew.
And you saw them
He's
still
still
back there.
with his sister, and I'm like, why am I in this line? So, you know, as far as like religion for me and like the organization of it, I find it all really beautiful and fascinating. And where I get mad, right, is where's the exclusivity, the like, well, you
Yeah.
don't have the thing to be able to do the thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this doesn't seem sustainable. And I feel this way about a lot of different religious paths that have, I mean, I feel this way about certain aspects of TM. We've talked about this. I'm like, oh, you need this special lesson to be able to do this bedtime meditation. Like, it just seems all very gatekeepy to me. But anything that's outside of that realm, I'm like, I am all for religious practices that are rooted in love. And I'm definitely more of a spiritual person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These turkeys.
Well, it was unbelievable. I'm like, I am in this line.
Well, I mean, it is an interesting thing. Talk about trauma that comes up, but you sit there and then other people are going up, and the thoughts go through your head, and they're wondering like, what didn't I do? What did I do?
It's
Right.
like, oh, they can't.
And
the problem
like,
here?
you
They
know,
can't go up to receive.
can't-
Ooh,
yeah.
I wonder why. Ooh.
yeah, and I mean that's probably my experience with it growing up. So that was like my first I'm like, this isn't fair. You know, I had gotten what is your middle name and then
When you get your confirmation name.
your confirmation
Yeah.
name, and then I really started to be like, well, you know, my mom's like, I wouldn't. She's like, I'm not welcome there. And then the fact that she felt like she wasn't that
Yeah.
like spun me as a child into, like you said, the inclusion.
Inclusivity
And,
thing.
yeah,
Wait, what's
inclusivity.
your confirmation name?
Oh, I just picked Matthew.
It's
What?
Yeah.
You just picked the same one?
I was
Well,
like,
what is your middle name?
I
again?
used my opportunity.
Connor?
So Matthew, Connor, Matthew O'Neill.
Well, I feel like it was like, when a band has an album that they just name after the band,
Yeah.
like
yeah,
Metallica.
that's kind of cool.
Metallica. I was
Matthew's
like,
a great
that's
biblical
cool.
name,
I'm
though.
just gonna take right.
You're like, I like this
Yeah.
one. This one's
What's
solid.
your
I don't need to
confirmation
be
name?
Jonathan.
Sebastian.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Really?
That was my grandpa Trapani's name.
Yeah,
Sebastian.
patron saint of
Great.
athletes. So that shows
Yeah.
where my mind was at that
I
time.
love that. Right.
He actually, his story is amazing. He got martyred, like got shot like 1,000 times with arrows, and kept like fighting and whatever. So
Right.
also love
Really
that.
badass.
Strength, yeah.
Warrior shit right
He had
there.
the most violent picture in the saint book that I had. So I think
Continue.
that from childhood, I was
You're
like,
like,
dude,
"This-
this is the
this
coolest
person."
one.
The coolest one.
This person.
And like I was always told that being like that, getting martyred was like the ultimate
Right.
like sacrifice, like to the faith, and like that if you get martyred, you go straight to heaven. Like, and I was like, oh, duh, I want to get martyred.
Wow.
Didn't think about it,
Wow.
But yeah, so
I
there's,
never received that message.
there's a lot there.
All right.
So did you have a confirmation name?
Yeah, Teresa.
That's a good one too.
Teresa. Well,
Teresa.
My grandmother's name, great grandmother, someone in my family. At this point, I'm like unclear in this moment. Their name was Teresa, and then I was like, I wanted to be Mother Teresa.
Heck yeah!
I
Oh my
loved-
gosh.
I wanted
Do they
to be
give you a book
Mother
that you
Teresa.
can pick from, or can you pick any?
It was
name?
just like in the catechism book. It was
Right.
in the
I think it's like
yeah.
Saints.
It was
Yes,
an idea
Book
you get
of
to
Saint,
choose.
yeah.
this name
Okay,
usually around
so I couldn't
Saint.
be
Yeah.
like my confirmation name is Summer Rain.
Yeah,
No.
no,
Definitely no.
No, because
They would know right there. That would definitely. They're like, this girl, she's not supposed to be
She's
here.
out.
Yeah, she did not get her first communion.
You are confirmed. Your name is now Matthew Connor Aragorn O'Neill.
And
That's
I
right.
remember to go through that process, we had to go to like a camp or something.
It's a
We went-
confirmation. Is
Yeah, we went to
thing.
a camp, and I just remember listening to this music, and I'm like, what are we doing at this camp? And yeah, so yeah.
For my
Dad
preparation,
taught that, didn't he?
No, he taught the RCIA, which is basically if you're an adult and you want to convert, you take classes that's basically about the faith, the religion, and all the nuts and
Okay.
bolts. And then it's usually like through the fall and winter, and then springtime. Springtime is usually when confirmations and
Yep.
the first communions happen.
Okay.
And if you're an adult, you can go through those classes and stuff, and then like on one of the days of church, you will get your first communion and be confirmed, and that's that. And that's what he taught. I think he might have also taught. Now, see, in St. Greg's, 7th grade was the big year that you got your confirmation,
Yeah.
and it was every Monday night of like during the school year from fall, winter into spring, like for an hour and a half. Like it's 7 o'clock at night. They would have to all like go classes and take these classes, which was a big deal because that means we missed a year's worth of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Oh my
Dang.
It was at
God.
the same time. Yeah,
Ooh.
we were so bummed about
That's
that.
brutal.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it was rough.
goodness.
Well,
you
and you
couldn't
have
even
your.
DVR things at that point.
That's right.
Yeah.
You just missed it.
You missed it.
I remember when that came out.
Gone
DVR.
forever.
I was explaining that to our kids. I was like, did you know that like when we were kids, because I was telling them about Dragon Ball Z, and that I every day after school I would come home and watch Dragon Ball Z, and I was cracking up telling them that like there would be entire episodes where they would just be powering up, where like that nothing would happen the entire episode. But I was explaining that you'd have to come at that time, and if you didn't, you couldn't watch it at all.
Right.
That whole day, it's just off limits. Like basically, they were blown away.
Well, it's funny. It's I'm thinking now TV, like even TV shows that were made back in the time when TV was like TV.
Yeah.
They have like the breaks where
Yep.
there would be a commercial.
yeah.
I want to like pause it and be like, okay, kids, you have 60 seconds to go to the bathroom, get something to eat,
Yeah.
and then I'm going to start it.
gonna
And
start
if you miss
again.
it, you're going to miss it.
Yeah,
The
it's over.
Dice you roll back then.
So funny. So funny.
Yeah, do you have a confirmation sponsor?
Yes,
Oh,
it was
yeah, I
my
forgot about
Uncle
that.
Bob.
Oh, that's
My Uncle Bob too.
No.
Yeah.
Was
no
your
joke.
Uncle Bob
Stop
also
it.
your godfather?
No, but he is a pastor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now he's a
he's-
pastor. He wasn't then.
He was
but
my dad's roommate in college.
cool.
And your godfather.
And a godfather.
Yeah,
yeah.
Wow, Uncle Bob.
Wow, these are things.
Mine was my Aunt Marlo.
I think that I have.
Aunt Marlo,
I
great
think
name.
I have
Yeah, it's a nice
godparents.
name, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you got baptized, you got
Yeah.
godparents.
Yeah.
I want to say they were my mom's like friends from high school
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Big
okay.
choice.
who were
Same
dating.
with
Yep.
my dad. I was like, Okay.
And I have like one picture of me as a baby, like sitting on their laps. And my mom was 18 when I was born. So like they're obviously also very young babies. And my godfather just has this giant hickey on his neck.
Oh my goodness.
Like, wow.
That's amazing.
Okay.
Oh, that's funny.
I mean, I wasn't like in my baptism gown or anything, but it's the picture that I have.
That's
I think
cool.
I'm Thea and Sadie's godfather. Even though they
Did you get him gifts?
In name, not in ritual.
right, because they didn't get baptized.
Right.
But I remember it was like my sister called me one day. I was driving home from the comic book store. I'm like 27. She's like, how do you feel about being a godfather? I'm like, I love it. She's like, okay, this is more about like if something happens to me or anyone, you're taking the kids. Like, I'm honored that you
Trust
Think
me.
of
that I'm at the top of the list.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
That was something I thought about so much as being one of 5 kids, like thinking like, okay, so wait. So if my mom and dad died, all of us are just going to different people's
Yeah,
houses.
yeah.
I was like,
That's
I don't know
sus.
about all that. I was like, my godparents are the best, but like I was thinking like, so that we're all gonna get separated too. I was like, this is like the most messed up way to do this ever.
This doesn't work.
I was like, geez
This
Louise.
isn't sustainable. Oh, interesting.
But
Yeah.
godparents definitely, and then they give you gifts like for different holidays.
They're
And
supposed
so then you're-
to, dang it.
And then you're like, dang, my brother got the best ones. Like they get like amazing gifts sometimes, and like, but it's a comparative thing. But it was definitely funny. That's a
I'm
funny little
Ariana's
wrinkle.
godmother.
Oh,
Ariana's my cousin.
right.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
first
I
thought of
immediately go to our
No,
area.
not
Yes, I thought that
Wait,
too.
what is
our
the
How's that
friend
work?
slash
Did
student.
she just like text you one day and be like, "Hey, hey,
Can you be my fairy
Jeannie.
godmother?
Shout out to Ariana."
No. I was
I was
14.
gonna say you were a teenager.
I was 14 when she was born. Yep.
Wow.
And my aunt was like, "Will you be her godmother?" And I'm like,
I don't know what that means. And yes,
Sure.
"Oh, I definitely knew what it meant." And I also was like, "Obviously, I'm the most qualified for this because everyone else that's around here is a hot mess." So yeah, I can handle it. So far, she hasn't really needed me, but
that's true.
um,
She's over 30 now, so she's on her
there
own.
have been
She's good now. Yeah.
there have been a
Regardless.
couple of moments where we've had to have some chatsies, but other than that, yeah. So I mean, it's interesting to me, like to hear like how we have all of these different and similar religious experiences, and then all consider ourselves pretty spiritual, and the ways that we think about and interact with spirituality now as adults, and the work that we do. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
the organization that we work for and the work that we do here, it all came together in this really beautiful way. And I think there's all these differences still in the ways that we probably
Yeah.
think about spiritual
That
practice.
was going to be my next question. We kind
Yeah.
of covered like the religious origins, because I think we all had mostly a religious origin. Well, I think it's pretty easy to identify a religion or like define. But like I want to know like how would you define spirituality? Like what is I mean, what does it need to include? If not all things, but like what is it that is spirituality? Like what is it for you?
I love that.
Thanks. What's your answer?
Oh, my answer.
Quit stalling. The answer that you want me to give now?
It's a great question.
No, I mean,
Let me take a minute.
this is only for me.
I mean,
and
also I could edit any pause.
It's true. It's true.
Sure.
And I know what spirituality is for me. It's my connection to the aspect of myself that is divine and that isn't separate. So, it's religion without a middle person.
Okay.
It's direct connection to that. I mean, spiritual practice for me and how it looks is pretty earth-based in nature, and thinking about like the wheel of the year and the seasons and paying close attention to lunar cycles.
Which, like, if we lived in a more accepting world, would probably be considered religion.
Yeah.
right,
Like,
yeah.
not just spiritual practice. It would
Right.
be because it has, like, ritual and, I won't say rules, but I guess ritual is the word. But, like, it
Well, I'd say
might
it is.
be, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say that it is in a certain sense, right?
with openness, excuse me, with openness in the sense of like if we don't do it this way, we're not going to something. you
Right.
know?
Well, I think that's a
Like-
big component of how I
like,
practice is
yeah.
that there is not. People are so convinced that they're going to do something wrong
Right.
because of the ways that religion has been passed down. Like this is you light this color candle on this feast day, and
Right.
things have to be decorated, and this has to go right. And I think that carries over a lot of times, and people thinking that they can do spirituality wrong, that they can like, you know, what are you supposed to do on Imbolc? And I'm like, what do you want to do on Imbolc? You know, like, well, I don't have a white candle. Cool. What color candle do you have? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
is, you know, just being able to be open and flexible and
Do people get disappointed at that openness and flexibility? Like, are they looking for a more structured, where they're like, oh, here's what you do. You light this candle and you do this thing with these herbs and you say this. But then if you approach it as, you don't need any of that. Do people get disappointed almost? Like, or
I don't know if they get
surprised?
disappointed, but it feels like analysis paralysis, right? Like if you don't know how to do a thing because you've never seen the thing done, it'd be kind of like a really fun experiment if you were able to put a group of people in a room and be like, have a wedding, right? But they don't have any idea of what a wedding is about. Like
They know what's
in
supposed to
detail.
happen,
They know
like-
these two people
Yeah.
are going to be married by the end of this thing, but there's no
Prior.
known structure. Like, what would that even look like if you got a group of 5-year-olds together and you were
Right.
like, have a wedding, you know, and they didn't have an idea of that? What would it look like?
And would it matter? Let's say they're not 5. Let's say they're adults.
Yeah.
And like, would you think their marriage or wedding was any less significant or important? I wouldn't. I'd be like, yeah, this is the way. Like, this is like culture in a nutshell. Where like you decided what the ritual importance is going to look like, and it is. Like you've done it, therefore it exists and is important.
Yeah.
I think you have that intention behind it, right? You have that some sort of internal belief that I'm going to do this thing, and you know,
Yeah.
this is the oomph behind it.
I think like in regards to students and people in our community, right? It's like, they're not disappointed that there's flexibility, but they can feel like they don't know where to start if they're not given a structure.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't know how you're supposed to celebrate something or mark a particular passage of time or a rite of passage, then it can feel like, what are the elements that I would need? You know, like how do I go
What's the
about
recipe?
this?
Yeah, what's the recipe?
And ritual, I don't think is something that comes as easy to us anymore. And I mean, when I think about being in youth group in UU, one of the things that was consistent is that in every youth group session, we would light a chalice. So the symbol in Unitarian Universalism is not a cross. It's not a Star of David. You know, like it's not a symbol that you would associate with a particular religious practice. It's a flame, and it's the flame of wisdom. It's the flame of curiosity. Like, so to start everything, you light a chalice, and as adolescents, we would go bananas on making up rituals. Like we would have poems we were reading, we would have songs we were singing, like we would bring in Alanis Morissette. Like there
Feels
we
very
were-
creative.
It was so fun and so creative, and there probably were too many drama club kids, honestly, in the UU group at that point.
I'm just picturing you singing "You Ought to Know" at the top of your lungs in the basement of UU.
Yeah. In a microphone in the
Meanwhile,
pulpit.
Amazing.
all the adults are upstairs being totally supportive and understanding.
Oh no, but the
Please
best
make
part
it stop
about
in my
it
head.
Yeah, right? No, it's a good song.
is like twice a year they would let us do that in the Sunday service.
Oh my gosh.
So we would bring
Get to
like
choose.
we would hold service.
Cool.
And the whole
Wow.
congregation would be there. And so like it gave us kind of this freedom in a sense to be able to create and to choreograph and to orchestrate whatever this ritual was about to be. And I just don't think that very many people it's one extreme or the other, right? It's like this is exactly what you're supposed to do on every single day no matter what, and these are the readings and these are the things, or it's like there isn't. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
You know, for a little bit my mom, like when I was maybe 6 and 7, it was short-lived. We did this like fellowship thing. Guys, I don't know what this was. There was speaking in tongues and no other like structure. And it was always in someone's weird basement. Could have been a cult.
Those three things make it really very
I don't know.
Could have
How
been
many
a cult.
candles were there?
Yeah.
So I think that what people want isn't necessarily like you have to do it this way, but some kind of banks on the river, or it feels too
Banks
overwhelming.
on the River is a good idea.
Yeah.
Josh, question.
Yeah.
What is your religious practice like now, and how much what you would call spirituality is kind of injected into that? You know what I mean? Like, are you as religious or like as practicing as you were growing up, or is other things kind of
well, and I think it's when I've been thinking about that question since you asked. I think that I have gone through so many different iterations of like separating. I was thinking there's such a safety in thinking that you're right about God. Like it's like there's a righteousness, right, that comes with the faith, that what Christianity is in its design. And so it's like there's a comfort for me, and always was when I was a kid, and being like, oh, I know what God is. Like, I know what God is. God is real. And like, I talk to Jesus, and like, that is like my prayer practice is like, and that is still true today. I went through a period of time where I was like, oh, it's all bullshit. Yeah. Like, like, oh, it's all bullshit. Like, I met people from other faiths, and I was like, oh my God, this is just a way to control people. Like, wow. Like, and you learn about history, and then like the Crusades, and like all these horrible atrocities, and colonialism, and like all these things that were in the name, like used Christianity as a tool in these injustices, to basically make these injustices take place. Right. And in the name of God, right? And so learning about that was like, it made me be like, oh my God, it's fake. Like, this is all fake. And, it's a way that provides solace for those who don't have control of their lot in the world. And because there's the promise of heaven. And so it's like, there's this goal of like, don't do it wrong, or else you're eternally damned, which that also threw me off, where I was like, what God would create you and know everything about your life, already knows the decisions you're going to make, but then is petty enough to then, after you die, send you to torture for eternity, not just like for your life, like the length of your life, but for eternity. And I thought, wow, that's like an incredibly powerful motivator. I'm like, that is such a powerful motivator for people to stay on a particular path. And so I had to go through all of that and kind of, like Jeannie said, kind of choose like what, because there are so many nuggets of wisdom within the spiritual practice of Christianity, and like treating people with love, and especially the Gospels. I think that I found as I've gotten older, like I said, reconnected to some of the tradition and ritual that were really beneficial to that I watched my father practice diligently for my entire life. And so I respect that. I respect the reverence, and it's like from a place of reverence and gratitude that I love to put myself. So to answer your question, now I still do Christian prayers. I still talk to Jesus as like my connection to God, and like the way that I have envisioned God that way for my whole life. So like going to a place, I remember when they taught me how to pray, like when I remember the moment where they're like, all you have to do is imagine you're talking to Jesus. Like imagine that is the situation, because that is the situation. And so that has been a really powerful image for me, to be able to have a relationship with God in a way that is, it's ever present. So when I meditate, so I've mixed practices where like when I practice yoga a lot on my own, I would put on a rosary. So like somebody saying the rosary while I did just sun salutations. Yeah. So I would just do sun salutations every morning with a rosary in the background, and I would attach an intention to every one. So it's like my family, go through that. And so sort of still practicing my connection to God, but also with more of an open mind that like I've also studied other faiths, and like opened my mind to to any wisdom that there is in a certain sense. And I know that if there are Christian family members listening to this, like save your judgment for another day, or pray on it. But it's, I think that I gained so much from the gratitude aspects of faith, and in times of difficulty, relying that there is that there's a plan in all of it. And it's like God's plan. And I know that could be spiritual bypassing. Now that I've learned a lot about what that is, and it's not perfect. I think that that's the thing about religion is it is I didn't choose to be born into a Christian family, but that is how I saw the world for the beginning of my entire life until I had my own thoughts. Yeah. Until I had a chance to experience other people and take away that dogma that was like consistently put in my brain like nonstop. And as you're growing up, the rules that come along with being a Christian are not so logical.
Right.
They're like things that definitely feel oppressive, and like where it's like, oh my God, if you do that, you're going to hell. I'm like, I'm 12. It's like that kind of thing was so threatening in a way. Yeah. And I don't think of God as threatening. As I've grown up, my spirituality has allowed me to see God as love, and that when you boil down Jesus to what his message was, it's almost the opposite of the rest of the Bible in a certain sense. And so I really attach to that, and I think that allows me to treat other people with love and respect regardless of the scenario. And that's my spirituality at this point, is getting to refine what I was taught into something that's usable to me daily.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Man, so many things. I don't think I know anyone that was either raised or practicing, I'll say Catholic because that was in my circle, that didn't at some point have I won't say crisis, but a serious questioning of like, what is this? Like, I'm noticing some things. Yeah.
Question?
To this, reflexive, definitely. I think he went through it a little bit earlier because at some point at college, he was thinking about seminary.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So I think he reached that before. He, I think, engaged with those when I was just like, get it out of here, not for me. And then I kind of like, I didn't really do any sort of that type of reflecting until I was like late 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
Then I finally kind of came around and be like, okay, well, like, what was my experience as a Catholic? What does it have to offer, for lack of a better phrase, now? Like, for me, as far as like, will I take something? Will this help me in any sort of aspect of my life? That was one thing. And, also what Josh was saying, how like you're meshing two practices. It made me think of after Berkshire Yoga Fest last year, we stopped in Vermont to meet two friends that we used to teach with.
Yeah.
And I had been doing TM for like a month, not even, probably 2-3 weeks. And I was already like, this is amazing. This practice is so good. And then it was a married couple, and the guy, his name is Hal, it was always like angry, just like frustrated, and like students and like always like on edge.
Always.
And I'm like, man, if I could just give TM to one person, it would be Hal, because he like needs it. And I genuinely, like, this is bringing me so much joy and peace, and I notice it myself. I want this for everyone, particularly someone I know who isn't like that.
Yeah.
And we were having pizza and we're talking about it, and he's like, oh, I do, like, that sounds like this prayer I do. And it's basically a meditation where I don't know if he repeats something or if he sits in silence, but when thoughts come up,
right,
it's not the mantra, but it's a phrase of something referring to Jesus, like, and that brings him back into the meditation. I'm like, that's exactly what TM is.
Yeah.
Like, he's already
It's
doing
the
it.
same
I'm like,
thing.
it's so interesting how many different practices and threads interweave throughout faiths and spiritual practices. It is so fascinating to me. Like, I could spend my life.
Well, like thinking of
researching
mantra,
that.
like mantra, it's like, and singing in music for Christianity is like such a huge part. Like, think of friars and monks, like they have written music that is still like unbelievable. Like the choral aspects of it.
Queued up Pandora on our TV. The last station I listened to while I was reading is Gregorian chants.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible.
I will say that going back
chanting,
to practicing mantra in the depth that I've practiced mantra and getting into that, being in that realm of oneness, it was probably a couple months ago. I was on my way home from work, and the only thing that my phone was dead. The only thing that would come on the radio was a Christian channel. And I'm fine with that. I was like, all right, I'll listen to this. And then the whole rosary came on.
Oh, wow.
And I just started to chant or recite along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm driving, and I swear I was going through a portal of space and time.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I was like, this is really powerful for me. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that like I have held, have revisited over, I don't know, like the last couple months.
Cool.
Just, I would say almost regularly practicing the rosary.
Wow.
I didn't
Cool.
even know that
And-
the rosary was a thing that wasn't a necklace.
And I contacted
Really?
my mom because I just felt called to, and she's like, oh, I've been doing that too lately. And I was
Wow.
like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's cool.
And in a sense, I feel like it was at that time I was kind of talking to Jeannie. I was like, I feel like I'm healing this mother wound or something. And then like I called my mom, and she's like, I've been doing that too. I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting.
Wow.
But yeah.
That's cool. Right. It's so interesting to teach you because you just will say things like,
So interesting
what
to
is
teach
that?
you, honey.
Isn't that the necklace they wear? I'm like, oh my God, honey.
Well,
stop
I'm just
talking.
like,
It's so
But
true.
it's also
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if it's a mala
It's
in
like
a
a mala.
in a sense,
I
right?
know.
So
And
I'm
that's
like-
where
I didn't know that when I hear somebody refer to the rosary, I think they're referring to beads,
Right.
Yes.
not a prayer.
Yeah.
Well,
So that is new information
you
for me.
use them
when Josh just said that.
saying-
for
Right.
to
To
go
keep
through.
track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To-
Yeah.
yeah.
On the Catholic note, though, we just watched this movie called Conclave,
Oh yeah.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is
Have you seen it?
I
so
haven't
good,
seen it, but I want to watch it
which
so
is
bad.
so good.
A lot
Um,
of big like Ray Fiennes is in it.
Yep.
John Lithgow.
Oh, it
Stanley
looks amazing.
Tucci.
Yeah.
Stanley Tucci.
It's basically like there's a conclave, so
Yeah.
they need to elect a new
Choosing
pope,
new pope. Yeah.
and it's like a political thriller because
Oh,
it's
it's
like,
Cool.
so good.
yeah.
Well, and
Check it
actually,
out.
that part of the church is incredibly interesting to me, and also incredibly silly at the same time.
Oh, of course.
Like I think that the bishops and the cardinals and the control structure,
Oh,
the
yeah.
like whole global,
Yeah.
like it's a government, you know, like
Oh,
it is
100%.
sort of like a global government. They have lands and coffers
Oh, yeah.
and all those type of things. It's like that part of it. When you're younger, you're like, yeah, the Pope. It's like that's Jesus on earth, like sort of, and it's like okay, like, and then you get older and you're like, well, there's a lot of bad
so-
stuff going on.
It's so funny that you say this too, Josh, because like when we were watching the documentary that we all discussed,
Yep.
and they were describing the like officers
Mhm.
and levels,
The
and,
hierarchy.
like, these people and this hierarchy. I was like, yo,
Yeah.
why do all of these spiritual communities want to exist within a hierarchical structure? And what is it about that? And even like it's a slippery slope, right? Because even in certain pagan religion and spiritual practice, like people will differentiate between being like a high priestess
Mm-hmm.
compared to, a priestess or a witch or another word. And it's like in earth-based spirituality, there would be no high, like there would be
Right.
no, because a coven is a circle. Like it is, everyone has equal power in that structure. It should never be about that pyramid of the high priestess at the top. Right?
Well, I mean,
Right.
when you look
but
at
it's so like,
Well, and it's in everything, like you
Yeah.
said. It
People
really
get
is
sucked in.
interesting. Well, and I think when money becomes a huge part of it,
Mm-hmm.
like it has, and it's just like anything, like we talked about in that episode, that practices turned to a way to control, turned to a way to make money, turned to a way to maximize profit.
Yeah, it's like let's feel the light
You know?
within,
and to
then
keep customers.
Keep customers. It's
Yeah.
control, you know,
Keep
like,
customers.
and the sacraments, like I was going to say, sacraments is a way the church makes money. So like communions, you pay for a communion. Like you pay for the church to put on a wedding for you. You know, like
Right.
those things are
I
all.
remember even
a
the
part of it,
basket would
too.
go around. That would be a thing. I would see other people putting in 20s, and
Yeah,
you know,
10% of what you make
We
you're supposed to
weren't,
put.
you know.
Tithe, yeah.
I would see my dad put in what he could, and that was even a thing. You
Oh,
know,
totally.
oh, yeah.
That was
Well, and
even
that's
a thing.
status too. It's like there's status. It's like everyone.
right?
That's a part of our, I guess our human way of organizing is like to, I mean, since ancient times, right? It's like there's different types of inequality and status and power, and in the, I mean, especially in Catholicism, bishops like ran countries, you know, like the higher the priest is, they were telling people what to do
Yeah.
and getting paid incredible
much.
amounts. They were royalty in their own way. And so that kind of, when I read about that, I was like, what
know.
the fact that this is still in this format is like, they haven't even looked at themselves at all.
Right.
Like throughout
Well, you
it.
look at the mission of like Christianity is to spread the word.
Of course.
And you can't do that globally without an organization. There needs to be some sort of hierarchy. That end, when it came about in the height of the Roman Empire.
Of course.
It just basically borrowed that hierarchy. It's
Totally.
like, here's the structure, like there's an emperor, and then there's praetors, and then there's governors. I'm like, well, it's the same kind of structure, and it worked for them. So like, this is how we're going to structure it to manage as large as they want to be.
Right.
That said, though, I mean, as much as I am so like not about the patriarchy, not about hierarchy, not about that structure at all, when we were in Rome and we stayed in an Airbnb that was on the other side of the Vatican Wall.
Right, like
We were so
in
close.
Rome, like there's a small balcony. You walk on it, and there's
the wall.
a Vatican
Like,
Wall across
Vatican
the street.
Wall, right there.
So cool.
So we
That's
we got up to go to St. Peter's Square and to see the Pope speak.
Pope speaks every Sunday.
And
He gives
so
an address
we
from
are-
his
Yep.
balcony.
We're walking out.
And this was
gonna go see the Pope.
April.
Gonna go see the Pope, right? And like, I'm like, whatever. We're gonna see the Pope. That's what you do. We're right here. And he came out. I could not understand a single thing he said.
Yep.
Have no idea.
This
We're
is-
in
and
a
this was
a lot of
current
people.
Pope
Yep.
Francis,
Yeah.
current Pope.
of people, like
Oh yeah,
so
St. Peter. It was,
many
it was
people.
pretty packed. Yeah.
And I just stood there and sobbed.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what is going on right now? He's like, are you? I'm like, this is so beautiful. I don't know
Well, it's
what's
that
going
sense
on.
of like
It's faith
community,
power.
people
Yeah.
coming
Yes.
together, and this and this,
And
Yeah.
belief.
and belief,
Common
yeah.
belief. Like,
And you know what? No one was acting like a buffoon
yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah.
In this like everyone was just being
Even
peaceful and loving and
even being a lapsed Catholic, it was very moving
Yeah.
Yeah.
to be in that space with that person and like who he represents. Right?
Yeah.
You know, it was very, very
the
cool.
wave his little hand.
It was awesome. And then it was the coolest. That was the coolest day because that was noon on a Sunday.
Yep.
And then we just like walked around Rome and we found this like hole in the wall place to eat
Oh my
lunch.
God,
That's
that
when I
was a wild
realized
day.
I did not know how much 1.75 liters
We did
of
not.
wine was.
No.
Oh.
It was a lot more
It's
than
a
I thought.
lot.
Then we tipsy walked around Trastevere for an afternoon. It was wonderful.
Sounds amazing.
We
Yeah.
tipsy walked around for hours and hours and hours.
I know.
I think that sounds like what exactly you're supposed to do. In Rome.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
that's-
so.
that, like,
Yeah.
sounds like
Yeah.
I think
if they
so.
were making a tour, that would like
Yeah, a
be
little-
essentially what
tipsy
the
walk
idea
around.
would be.
I
Yeah.
had
Cappuccino.
dynamite spaghetti meatball lunch.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it was
Gallon
just-
of wine.
Like out
So,
out
so
in the
moving.
stone patio.
Yeah.
That was gorgeous.
That sounds
and
awesome.
I feel that way. I have felt that way in other moments too. You know, I in my undergrad being a history major and being really, really focused on world religions in particular. We went and we had an opportunity to go for like a half a day and just sit down with an imam and ask any questions
Cool.
that
Oh,
you
wow.
wanted to ask.
That's really
And
cool.
So it was maybe you had to be a senior, you had to be a history major, and you had to basically say like, this is my intention and why I want to go. So there were only like 5 or 6 of us.
Wow.
And we were just around this table with this imam and in this beautiful mosque. And he gave us a tour. And, you know, I'm asking all the hard hitting, like feminist questions, like, you know, that I will.
Of course you will.
And respectfully. And he was just, it was so beautiful and so moving and so connected to love. And I was just like, you know, it's just the human brain that makes everything all squiggly.
Yeah.
It's all the division of it all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I am endlessly fascinated with like Catholicism. In my next life, I'm going to just as an like Roman Catholic ancient history is all I'm going to study for
I
a
feel like
lifetime.
that is the majority of what's in our library.
I don't
I
know.
know,
It's funny
but, like,
because when
I
Josh was
gotta-
talking, it's just like my Akashic records were like going off, and I'm like, I don't know, what's the relation between this and that?
It's
you
just
know?
so fascinating how like the more you read about origins and the meanings of things, the more overlap you see everywhere, and you're like, this is all more similar than it is different in a lot of ways. It's fascinating.
Well,
I've
and
been
actually,
reading-
oh no, go ahead.
I've been reading a lot about Sikhism lately. Again, I guess I should say, and revisiting like where the birth of this faith came from. and that deep longing that was there to eliminate the Hindu caste system and the fighting between Hindu and Muslim people in India. And like it is just reading about the history of this faith, it makes it so clear why like all the mantras and japji and the ways that Sikh prayer and chant feel just so soothing. And it's like because it was all birthed from that intention of like
Peace.
of unity.
Yeah,
of like,
soothing and like illuminating. That's like
yeah, of like you know, the first Sikh guru was not like, I am here to preach a religion. He was like, I want Muslim people and Hindu people to be eating food together. He's like, I want there to not be a separation. I want people from all levels of the caste system sitting down and eating together, rather than viewing each other as dirty or, you know, making you tainted for sitting next to another human being.
Or that you're sinned for life or things of
or
that
cursed.
nature.
I mean, like,
exactly.
And so it just came from like such a pure space of like, I'm not here to create a religion, to convert people, to gain power, to gain followers. And it was like, I'm here to unify.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, through the act of, I would say like through my training and things of that nature, I've experienced the act of forgiveness and things of that nature. So I see that where like there's some connection there. And I would like to share my tea today. It says the brightness of your being is generated from within. And as I look down at that, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Like that love of the universe lives within you.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just like finding that love that lives within you. And to me, it is that oneness with God, universe, love, divine, all of that is within me.
Yeah.
And
so
you have a particular spiritual practice that includes communicating with angels and spirit guides.
Definitely.
And that is something that incorporates, like, you see that as very much integrated into other religious paths that you've had, or have you kind of moved away from?
No, it's interesting. Like when I call upon archangels, I mean, that ties it all together, right? And I was attracted to that aspect, different angels when I was younger. And
Totally.
That's more so my mom would read me about the angels. I didn't necessarily learn that or remember that from going to church or things of that nature. So I remember that from my mom. And then once I started practicing energy work and integrative energy therapy, where you call upon a heart link for your angel for healing, I started to have all my guides come in and all these angels. And then I started to read about them again, and the correlation between that and that. And so I definitely still incorporate that in my life and in my practice. And I guess in a sense, to me, it's like a remembering, right? Yeah.
Very cool.
It's really interesting when you said the history part of it, because I remember the moment, the actual moment when I was like, wait a second. It was in my history class, my freshman year of college. I had this amazing professor who took us through, like, from the beginning. It was an art history class. So from the beginning of art, so like art, like from cave paintings through that into monotheism, like all through all different ancient civilizations, and through art alone, finding your way to Christianity, and me being like, they copied the whole thing. Like, it's like, and being like, oh my God, that makes so much sense that all of these things are so connected, because especially art and reverence and like keeping track of things, and like, and why Christianity like sought to erase like all of these things, and different faiths throughout the years try to erase this commonality because of that division, like because of that self-righteousness. And the wanting to imbibe in everyone that this is a new idea.
Right.
This is the right idea. And we finally figured it out, like with Jesus,
Well, imagine if everyone saw themselves as an infinite light being.
Right.
What would happen?
Well, exactly.
It'd
be harder to control everyone.
What would that vibration really be like if everyone saw that infinite love that lives within them?
Exactly.
Well, it's so funny you bring up like controlling them, which is like the dark side of like the religious organization.
Dark
I
side
read
of the
this
force.
book.
Yeah.
I read a book. The author's name was Steve Berry. It was this fiction thriller book. He writes books that basically action adventure thriller, but have like a historical mystery intertwined in the plot. And this one is about like Constantine and the Council of Nicaea, right? Like
Ooh,
what
yeah.
what like established the laws of Christianity. And like the whole premise was like the characters find these documents written by Constantine about like, here are the sacraments, here's why we're doing them, and the intention behind them. Like, here's why you are baptized young, here is why the marriages happen, here's what all these sacraments are intended to do. And spoiler alert, it was not necessarily about the establishment of faith. I mean, as
Right.
a Roman emperor, it's like, how do I maintain control over this vast space?
These
Organization
things.
and
Yes.
these things. And I was just like, oh, it was just so fast. That moment too, I'm just like, I could read about the origins and practices of Christianity forever. It's so fast. The more I learn about it, I'm like, oh, it's just like this other religion that existed in the Near East, right?
Yeah.
It's like, comparative religion's
Well,
fascinating.
and from a spirit,
is.
like from a unified field perspective, right? So like we can go the like everyone's copying everyone route.
Right.
We can go the it was about power and control route, and this was a formula that had worked or would work. Structure of Rome, structure of the papacy, and all of the levels of being an important person in Catholicism. From a unified field perspective, it's that threads of truth are everywhere. So like it's going to look the same in a lot of ways. It's like, this is why there's symbolism from, the ancient Celts, ancient Gaelic, Celtic culture that looks very similar to ancient Tibetan symbolism and carvings and things like, so it's like, it's just being in the mystery of that, I think is the most fascinating part of looking at spirituality and religion for me. And of course, also, art history, man. If I had a magic wand, everyone would be required
So
to take art
amazing.
history
Totally.
I agree.
in high school.
Fascinating.
In high
Yeah.
school. Like
It was the best. It was the
just
best
has
class I ever
such
took.
a
It was
full
absolutely
body
amazing.
of cultural, historic, social, religious, like precedents and timeline built
my
into
gosh.
it in a beautiful way.
I'm so happy you said that about that. It's because that's ended that. At first, I was super dejected about it. I was like, shit, nothing is true. But eventually, I came around to being like, what if it's all true?
What if it's all true?
I was like, what if the other
And-
thing is true? Like,
yeah.
it's just that everyone keeps landing in this similar location.
In a box. We
But-
just have to call it something.
and they're just trying to
particular.
define it for
Yeah.
their own traditions, like, and that is a beautiful, like, single thread we're all connected in, rather than it being like, see, told you, they didn't, they never made anything. This isn't true,
Well, it's like it's that whole there's nothing new under the sun, right?
Right.
And that isn't necessarily bad.
it doesn't have to be
yeah.
like such a negative indictment of faith all around the world. It's like, actually, we're just humans trying to figure
Exactly.
it out.
And I think sometimes we get the question of like, can I practice this and can I practice this
Together.
I
Yeah.
feel like I've gotten that
Go for it.
a little bit recently. And because I don't know, sometimes I think when it's brought up, there's like a level of like shame or something with that, in the sense of like, oh, I do want to revisit this. I feel differently about it. And like you said, there is that sense of religious trauma, and you can find the threads that are connected to you and weave it in. It can be this and it can be that. Yeah.
And to keep in mind that human beings are usually what's wrong with a religious
100%.
practice,
Right.
You know,
Yes.
where the threads and the philosophy around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, guys.
Awesome.
To wrap this up, I
Thanks.
feel like this is something if we were driving in a car for 4 hours,
Oh, we
could
would
spend half
just
the
keep
time
I
at
could
chatting,
least
talk
yeah.
about this
Oh
forever.
God, yeah,
Yeah.
we
about
definitely
that
could.
and all our different experiences about it. But
Yeah.
as always, fascinating, guys. Awesome.
It is.
Thank you.
All right, for the Wi-Fi pod, this is Matt.
This is Jeannie.
This is Sabrina.
And this is Joshua.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.